Book 2. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie. And I'm going to do a review of the trilogy, the Edan trilogy by Philip Chase. He is actually a booktuber on does a lot of great videos talking about fantasy, which is what his trilogy is. It's a fantasy trilogy. I just finished it halfway through October. I think it was halfway through October. I finished it. And I didn't want to I wrote individual reviews on Goodreads for each of the books and, of course, on Storygraph. But I wanted to, if I was going to do a review on here for you guys, I wanted to just review the whole trilogy. Because it is hard to talk about when it comes to a trilogy. I feel like it's hard to talk about a second book without giving away, without worrying about spoiling things. Because it's basically, unless it's one of those companion type series, with a trilogy, it's just going to give away. It's a continuation of the first book, so unless you've read the first book, and I don't know if you guys have, although I think it would make sense for you to, if I make it clear that it's a review of the second book, then it wouldn't make sense for you to watch this review for a second book in a trilogy unless you read the first book. But I think it's just easier to review the whole trilogy on here. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to do this because I feel like I'm not the best at reviewing fantasy books, because most fantasy books, I enjoy them so much that I just don't know how to articulate my feelings on the book. And then I always think, oh, I need to find some criticisms to point out, and because I feel like if in a review you don't say anything, at least a few criticisms, then people are gonna not believe you. And they're gonna think, they're not gonna trust your judgment if you just say, oh, I love the book, this is great, I love this and this and this. They're not gonna trust you because no book is perfect. And just like no movie is perfect. So here it goes. So this is, of course, a fantasy series. It's a trilogy. It's a chosen one story. And so it's basically, it pays homage to a lot of fantasy tropes, like in Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time, all those. It's pretty much a mixture of like modern and older fantasy with what Philip Chase does with the book. So if you're not a big fan of the older, more traditional fantasy, then you could still like it. It's just there might be things about it you don't love. Like I said, it uses the chosen one trope a lot. It used the chosen one's trope, and it also, one of my favorite tropes that it uses is the whole religion being used for ill intent, where, they think they're doing what's right, and they think they see themselves as the good guys, but really it's more just wanting to control everybody and force everyone to think the way you do. And I always find that a fascinating trope, because it's just interesting how those people think and wondering, how do they rationalize? And religion, I don't think religion was meant to be bad or controlling or anything. It was just a way to have faith and believe in something, and to explain things and understand things that you just don't understand, like death and why things happen the way they do. I think that is the intent of religion originally. That was what it was meant to be. It's meant to be a good thing, not necessarily a controlling thing as some people see it as. Because a lot of times, a lot of religions are all about, you have to follow these rules and guidelines, you have to do things a certain way, and you kind of have a bit of a group mentality, which can seem like a bit of a cult at times, depending how you execute it. Like, the Way of Edan has very much, there are times when it had a bit of a cult feel, although there was one point in the trilogy where I definitely got cult vibes with the situation, but not necessarily, like, like, or I should say, it felt like it was going in the direct, like, it could seem like a cult, but it wasn't meant. Like, I definitely felt like there were some Christian themes and like Jesus and how he gathered all these people, these followers to believe in him and to fight for him and praise him. It definitely had a lot of that vibe, especially in the third book. Um, I also, now as far as the main character, Dayraven, I thought he was okay. He was a decent main character, but he got kind of, and I did feel bad for him, especially what he struggles with. I mean, it was definitely an interesting seeing him struggle with, like, of course, Philip Chase has the whole idea of like the chosen one and not wanting to be chosen and struggling to accept it and embrace it and trying to be like, and thinking to themselves, okay, I'll just do this, but then once I'm done, I can go back home. Like that mentality of fighting the idea of I'm chosen, I might not make it back, I might not survive this, I might be sacrificing myself. Or even if I do live through this, I might never be able to go home again. Like that, Dayraven is struggling to accept that throughout, most of the trilogy. Throughout the first, halfway through book 2, I think he starts to accept it. He starts to realize, okay, this is who I am now, and I can't go back home. I can't go back to my old life. So that is I like how they explore, how Philip Chase explores that. But at the same time, after a while, the main character wasn't as interesting for me. He got kind of boring after a while. And actually kind of reminded me of the same problem I had with the Rift War Saga by Raymond E. Feist, where the main character of the first 2 books, Pug, after a while, he got kind of boring. I mean, I will say this though, at least with Philip Chase's book, his love interest for Dayraven was much more complex and interesting. In fact, I liked her more than Dayraven, honestly. And her journey and how she was this chosen heir. She's not related to the Queen Faldera of her little kingdom. I don't remember what her kingdom's called. Unfortunately, I don't remember I should have wrote them down. Because I just figured, I'll remember them, but I should have wrote them down. But I read the book on here on my Kindle, and it was a Kindle Unlimited. So, once I canceled the Kindle Unlimited, because I don't think I'm gonna, keep Kindle Unlimited because it's just gonna add more stress on me, being like feeling guilty because I'm not prioritizing my physical books, because I'm prioritizing my Kindle Unlimited books, and I still love buying books, but so I don't remember all the names. Again, like I said, I should have wrote the names down, but I didn't think about it. I figured I'd remember them, and some of them I do remember, but a lot of the names of characters I don't remember. Now the love interest name is Sequoia. I do remember her name. She was chosen by Queen Faldera to rule their kingdom, their city kingdom, and she is told that she can't have any attachments. Kind of like the Jedi in Star Wars. And, she, like, it will keep her distracted, it will tie her down, it will, and she distances herself emotionally from people. She doesn't get close to people, although she's constantly, people recognize how beautiful she is and become instantly interested in her and maybe even attracted to her, like a lot of the male characters do, because she's so beautiful and glamorous and powerful. But what's good is Philip Chase makes her a little bit more complex, because she tries to make herself emotionally distant from others and not get attached to people, but then she starts developing these feelings for Dayraven. She, like, what happened, something happened between the two of them that gave them even stronger connection, like a more spiritual connection. And she ends up starting developing these feelings for him, and it makes things all the more complicated, because she knows she's she's been led to believe that, oh, I can't have emotional attachments. I'm the queen. I can't have have a family or anything. And Day Raven's friend, whose name, and one of the many names I don't remember, is telling, at one point they're having a conversation where he's, pointing out how her life must be pretty lonely, and how, she's told by other characters that, you don't have to, like, you don't have to be like by yourself. And she also deals with how this whole situation with this big epic war and this way of this group of priests, this way of these from the way of the way priest have made her angry and have destroyed her home. And she's dealing with, especially in the third book, dealing with her emotional, like, being angry and then feeling guilty about having that anger. And it kind of deals with the whole, is it justifiable? And how the struggle with, if someone hurts the people you love, how it can make you angry, and the mentality of eye for an eye. And so we get a little of that as well. So I like some of the other characters, like some of the the one wizard character. He was really fun and unique. I cannot remember his name, but although I kept waiting for him to come, and he doesn't show up until like book 2. So again, that kind of was a little annoying. It was like, where is he? But I did love when he showed up. He was such a fun character. That silly, character that is probably a lot wiser than people give him credit for. But he plays like the silly character, but at times he plays the silly card, like acting like he's not a threat to people, but then like people underestimate him. I like that trope when you have a character that is underestimated, and then they prove to be more powerful than people realize. Those characters are always so much fun. Orvendale was pretty cool. Actually, with him, I kept thinking of a character from The Hobbit. With him, the character, I can't remember the character name at the moment, but the character that becomes a bear. That I kept thinking of him for Orvendale. I like, that's who I kept picturing, that actor. I was reading the dwarf, like, and as everyone says, they're basically dwarves, and they just are given a different name. They're kind of cool and fun. I like, one of them is very much a storyteller, and he's very, proud, but not proud as not just about his home and who he is and stuff. And then you have his brother's kind of the grumpy one. I always like that. That dynamic is always fun. You have the lighthearted one, and then you have the grumpy one that has trust issues. That's always a fun dynamic to see. I like, and Day Raven's friend, although I think he was like an older brother, because I think he was older than Day Raven. So I was confused. I'm curious how old Day Raven was supposed to be. Like, would he be in human years? Like, would he be like in his 20s or something, like early 20s? I want to say he was, but at first I thought he was a teenager, but I think he's an adult, a legal adult. But that character, the other character that is kind of like his friend, he was from kind of like an older brother figure. He was a fun character too. That character is very charming and stuff, and a bit of a ladies' man, but not in a disrespect. He doesn't disrespect women or anything, or takes advantage. He doesn't disrespect them or anything, or messes with them or anything. He's just a bit flirty. He kind of flirts and stuff, and he doesn't tie himself down to one woman. Those characters are always fun to read. Their laid back perspective. And I feel like it's that person who you would like to hang out with. That kind of person. The magic was very interesting. It wasn't very, like, specific. There were no, like, it didn't feel like there were any specific rules. It was kind of loose, and, like, you didn't really, it wasn't explained, or it was, but I just remember it being a little more messy. Not in a bad way, not in like it wasn't, Philip Chase didn't do it well. It was just there wasn't any specific structure or rules. It felt very, at least from what I remember. It's been a while. Like I said, I think it was mid October when I finished it. But it was kind of cool though. I did like the magic system. Um, it was very much about like controlling the world around you, and it's the type of magic where it could, in the wrong hands, it could be very dangerous and could hurt someone, because very much about control. So I could see where it would go in a bad direction. And of course there are dragons in the story, although they don't come until much later in the story. They're not in the first book as much, but they were really cool. And the way of Edan, the order that was the way of Edan, the priests were really interesting characters too. Like you could, and again, like the first, like Irkenwald was kind of one of those annoying villains that was like stomping his foot every time he didn't get in his way, and that like, oh, I'm the boss, I want to rule, that kind of character. So he was kind of a bit of a cliche character. Of course, you might like that kind of bad guy. They're not my favorite villains. My favorite villain was Bledla. I think that's how you say it. Because he was one of those, he was much more complex than Irkenwald. He was like someone who really had, like, he thought he was doing right. He led himself to believe he was the good guy. And that, Dayraven and everyone, he thought, like, were the bad guys. He thought he was the chosen one. He believes he is the vessel of the prophet and all that. And so he just rationalizes everything. Sometimes, to me, those villains are much more interesting. The ones that believe themselves are right and aren't just like, I want to rule the world, I want to take over. Like, that's why everyone loves Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Disney animated movie. I don't know about I'm assuming the same in the book, because I've only read a little bit of the book and I DNF'd it. But, that self-righteous villain, and there were moments where he questioned things, where he was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not, but he is persuaded by others to be like, no, you're right. You're you're the good guy. You're the one. You're the chosen one. You're the prophet. Don't let anyone question it. Dayraven is just a test. He's, you're being tested by this kid. That kind of thing. Like, he just, rationalize everything. Your Mom was also kind of interesting too as a villain. Again, he was one of those ones that's like, I'm in the right. He believed himself in the right, and he had good intentions. Actually, he had even better intentions. He had just as good intentions as Bledlow did. He was all like, I want to. I want to do what's best for the countries, for these kingdoms, and I want to unite everybody and all that. And that makes him scarier, is those villains that just think that they just really believe themselves right and believe themselves the good guys. It was very easy, at least for me to read. It was not that hard, and I don't know if it was because I was reading on Kindle, but I went through it very, it didn't take me that long to read. I mean, it still took some time, but, maybe I think that partly to do with it being on Kindle, and so I couldn't see the pages, which is funny because I've always made the argument of why I'm, part of why I'm a physical book purist is like, oh, I want to see my progress. And it's not like you don't get to see, and it's just you can't like look at the pages when you're reading while you're reading on a on a device. So it was very easy to read. They were still chunky, of course. 500 plus pages. But not that hard. He's very, Philip Chase feels very, I recall being very descriptive. I do I have mixed feelings about the song spell thing. I mean, in a way, I guess they were kind of songs, which was probably inspired by Lord of the Rings. Um, but I kind of struggled with knowing how to say them because, knowing the correct way to say it. So I think, as I've said it before when I was doing my update videos, that I probably would have benefited if he had an audiobook, which I think he does have an audiobook coming out. Which, actually, another booktuber that I really enjoy watching is going to be the narrator for the audiobook. So I'm going to almost want to see if I can get access to the audiobook. But I probably have to buy it, though. Because I don't know if it will be out on Libby or not. But yeah, I wouldn't mind listening to the audiobook because I love to see that the narrator he chose, hear him, because like I said, he's a booktuber that I like. But anyway, so yeah, that was the only thing. Like, I didn't know how he was supposed to say, but I think you run into, even if you're a constant fantasy reader, I think you're still gonna run into a situation where you don't know how something is supposed to be said, so you kind of make it up. Like, I've heard people talk about on BookTube videos that they sometimes they think a name is said, they say a name a certain way, and then they find out when they hear an audiobook that's not how you were supposed to say the name, or like they meet the author and they pronounce the name differently than how you assumed it was supposed to be said. Now I think if you're a non-fantasy reader, or at least, with my parents anyway, who they do read a little, they do read, not as much as me, but they do read, but they won't read fantasy because because like all the words are very confusing and they don't think they can. At least that's what my mom said. My mom has said. So, and I want to go to some of these places, these kingdoms, especially where Sequoia lives. Look, I bet that I would love to go there. So this beautiful place, just, I think it was like an island. It was kind of on an island. Like, it's just some of the places that they lived were just so beautiful and so would be so great to go. But I would miss the coziness of autumn and winter, and I think Sequoia's kingdom is hot all the time. So, but I love to visit there. That's my favorite place in the trilogy. Let's see, what else can I say? I guess I really don't have anything else to say. It was I enjoyed the trilogy. I had fun with it, and I think it's worth checking out if you're interested. And I hope you like it. Like, I hope my recommendation of this trilogy is a good experience for you. And I guess that's it. So if you guys like my review and liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified about my latest videos. And I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye!